This is interesting. Damian Chambers, who was Alen Babic's latest victim, has already got another fight scheduled for the 24th of July against Arturs Gorlovs in Latvia, in Riga. So, yeah, straight back on the horse. But this does, to me, suggest that he is going down the journeyman route. I've never seen Damian Chambers fight before, but this is typically what you get from journeymen. They'll get knocked out, and then little over a month later, they're back in the ring again. Now, obviously, when it comes to the UK, we have certain protocol when it comes to suffering stoppage defeats whereby you get suspended, and most countries have this. But there's nothing, well, actually, there may be something stopping a British fighter going abroad and fighting somewhere else. Perhaps they'll get in trouble with the British board, I'm not sure. But anyway, he's fighting on the 24th of July in Riga, in Latvia. But anyway, this Alen Babic fight. Now, again, I'd never seen Chambers before this, but looking at his box rec here, he's a career cruiserweight. And that's not so much of an issue because Babich himself is a very small heavyweight. But be that as it may, he took this fight on about 7 days' notice, I believe, at Damian Chambers, and still only came in at 198 pounds, nearly 199. So he's walking around, unless maybe he had another fight scheduled or was staying busy, staying on weight. It would seem to suggest that this guy is actually a small cruiserweight, because how many cruiserweights walk around at 198 pounds? Again, maybe he was keeping his weight down for another fight. But then again, perhaps he's just actually a small cruiserweight too. Now, the fight was, to me, somewhat interesting because Babich looked fleshy, and he's looked fleshy in previous fights before. But to me, this is the most fleshy he's looked. I know he's actually weighed heavier than this before, but to me, he looked a bit more solid physically when he was heavier and when he's been lighter. But here he looked fleshy, and I'm going to put that down to the layoff. Babich isn't one of these guys who believes in having a scientific diet or anything like that. He says he eats what he wants, pizzas and burgers, steaks and whatever he wants, he just does it. And the inactivity, as I say, eating what he wants, and also having to rest his shoulder. He claims he didn't rest it for as long as the doctor prescribed. And again, that's typical Babich. But nonetheless, he did have to rest it. And I'm not sure what the situation is like over there in his native Croatia, but perhaps, things are not as open as he would have hoped, certainly during the early days of him recovering from this shoulder injury. So, yeah, he looked a little fleshy here. And to me, he was blowing a bit after the first round. It was the typical Alen Babic first round where he comes out 100 miles an hour, bull in a china shop type stuff. But when he's done this in the past, in other fights, he hasn't looked as tired to me as he did after the first round of this fight. And even in the third round, he looked like he was gassing a little bit. He got clipped by Chambers a few times. And after the fight, I don't know whether it was a Freudian slip. And for those of you who don't know what a Freudian slip is, it's where you say something which ostensibly you didn't mean to say, but according to Sigmund Freud, you actually said what you meant the first time. Your subconscious managed to leak out, and then, you better cover your tracks. Actually, I didn't mean that. This is what I really meant. That kind of thing. So I don't know whether it was a Freudian slip there, or if it was just a genuine mistake, but Babich said that the guy buzzed him. Words to that effect. Now, if a guy like this is buzzing you, and look, sometimes cruiserweights will be able to catch you more cleanly, and they tend to have faster hands than most heavyweights, and sometimes power is speed. It's the element of surprise as much as the actual force behind the punch sometimes. So I don't want to cast too many doubts here over Babic's punch resistance, but if he did get steadied up a little bit by this guy, it doesn't bode well him going up against legitimate heavyweights, the likes of a Nick Webb. Now, I think Babich has got the power, from all I've seen in Nick Webb's career, to hurt Nick Webb and stop Nick Webb. I think he does have that kind of power. But Nick Webb has a lot of power himself. And he's not without technique. I mean, I was very impressed with him against Pfeiffer, because Pfeiffer had a pretty extensive amateur background, and I really thought he'd be beating Nick Webb. Nick Webb, of course, was knocked out by Dave Allen. He was stopped by Kamil Sokolovsky, and Kamil Sokolovsky, he's one of these journeymen that actually turns up to win. You know, like, what's the guy's name? Donnell Boone, excuse me, who fought Andre Ward, beat Adonis Stevenson, fought Kovalev, and so on. One of these journeymen that turns up to win and is dangerous. And he managed to defeat Nick Webb, stop Nick Webb. So if you're losing to those kind of guys, and as spirited and dangerous as Sokolovsky is, he's still limited at the end of the day. He's still been beaten by plenty of guys, including David Price. So Nick Webb stopped by him, stopped by Dave Allen. Limited, of course, but in most of those fights, he was actually winning in terms of boxing. And he can punch, as we saw against Eric Pfeiffer. So Alen Babic, a guy who's very open, small heavyweight, keeps his head down, swings. If Nick Webb manages to catch him the way that Damian Chambers caught him, what's going to happen to Alen Babic? Are we going to see the legs go? Are we going to see him get knocked down? Are we going to see him get knocked out? Will Alen Babic actually reach a decent level before he gets beaten? Because I'm sure we all think it's inevitable that he's going to lose at some point, as most fighters do, even world-class fighters. The vast majority eventually lose. But with Babich, a lot of people are saying it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later, and he won't get that far before it does happen. But until then, I'm going to enjoy the show. Babich put on his gladiator routine for this fight here. He even had the music when he came to the ring. And the way he fights, could you call it a pound shop Joe Frazier, a pound shop Mike Tyson? Is he a novelty act similar to Butterbean back in the 90s? He's obviously not a big, hefty guy like Butterbean was, but I mean, I'm talking about weight here, not height. I think they're a similar height. But Butterbean, even though he had a cult following, he was never really a serious threat to even the fringe contenders in the heavyweight division, much less the legit contenders or the champions. Is Babich going to be something similar to that? I'm just asking a question, because whatever happens in Alen Babich's career, I like the way he fights. I find him very entertaining, and I'm happy to accept him as a fighter for whatever he turns out to be. And I'm not one of these people who is only interested in championship material. No. David Price has provided me with some of the most entertaining heavyweight boxing over the past, 10 years. And he was never championship material, was he? So you don't have to be championship material. I've seen so many domestic fights over the years. Back in the Danny Williams, Michael Sprott, Matt Skelton days. They were tremendously exciting, entertaining fights. Matt Skelton against Bob Mirovich was an entertaining fight. Danny Williams against Keith Long was an entertaining fight. Now, obviously, Babich is not British, but could he be on that same kind of level as those guys? I guess time will tell. For me, it's just about the entertainment. With him putting on the gladiator persona. Are you not entertained? I was entertained by this fight, as I'm entertained by all of Alen Babich's fights so far. But yeah, there were questions, I think, raised by this fight in terms of him getting hit with a few shots, which is inevitable when you're so open like Babich and you're so focused on offense and pay virtually no attention to defense at all. It is going to be interesting, though, to see if his approach might be a little different against somebody as big and powerful as Nick Webb. He says it won't be, but, we'll wait and see. So, yeah, let me know what you guys thought in the comments below about Alen Babic's destruction of Damian Chambers. He came out firing on all cylinders in the first round. Chambers was under heavy pressure, but he hung in there. Second round, Chambers, again, was able to catch Babich with a few shots here and there. Ask a little, couple little questions. Then in the third round, Babich went at him again, full steam ahead. Not quite as intensely as he did in the first, but still. And he managed to land a left hook when Chambers was up against the ropes. And the referee stopped it without giving a count. Personally, I think he should have at least given a count. I don't like the habit that so many British referees get into of stopping fights with no counts and all that. I don't like it. And I'm going to talk about Steve Gray, by the way, in a separate video, because I've got a different take on that than most people, certainly a different take on it than Sky. But yeah, I personally think he should have at least completed the count. Have a look at the guy, look in his eyes and see first. Don't just get into this habit of waving things off when a guy's not out cold, when it was the first knockdown of the fight and it was only the third round and he had a decent second round. At least complete the count. That's all I'm saying. Complete the count, have a look at him, and then maybe stop it, Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And as far as Babich, where he goes and who he fights next, he's scheduled to fight Mark Bennett on July 7th. I've never seen Mark Bennett before, but I just watched a G-Man video where he was talking about the fact that Mark Bennett is a big heavyweight. So we'll see how Babich is able to deal with someone that size. And obviously he's been in there against a Tom Little, but Tom Little, he's a tall heavyweight. I don't necessarily think he's that big. He's heavy because he's very fleshy, but how much muscle is under there really? I don't think Tom Little has a really big frame. To me, he's a guy who, if he was in actual, real good shape, he might be able to get down under 230 pounds. In fact, how heavy was he? 234 against Alen Babic. And he could probably lose a bit more, really and truly. I'm not saying he should. Maybe he'll be so drained trying to get all the fat off that he'll lose a lot more strength and energy. I don't know. But if he did it the right way and over a long period of time, watch this diet, he could get into the 220s. I'm sure Tom Little. So I don't think he's a particularly big heavyweight weight-wise. But this Mark Bennett guy, let's have a look. Okay, here he is, 33 years of age, born in Kent, but lives in Doncaster in Yorkshire. Does he know Dave Allen? Okay, his last fight was actually a loss over 3 rounds on points to Nick Webb. That's interesting. So it's a common opponent of Nick Webb's. And since they're trying to make that fight, then it would make sense they put him in with a common opponent to see whether Babich can actually get him out of there, to see whether Babich can do a better job on this guy than Nick Webb did. And look, this was scheduled for 3 rounds, and it went the 3 rounds. So if Babich fights this guy and takes him out in 5, you can't really say, it depends how the fight goes, but if Babich is dominating throughout, you can't really say that Nick Webb did a better job because, again, he won on points in a 3-rounder. If it went 5, if it was scheduled for 5 or scheduled for 10, who's to say that it wouldn't have gone the distance if it was scheduled for, more rounds? So, anyway, Nick Webb lost to him. That was his first pro defeat. And he weighed 258 pounds, so that looks like a very big heavyweight there. Josh Sandland beat him over 3. Okay, all of his fights have been scheduled. Oh, he did have a 6-rounder there against Miles Willington. I'm going to have a look at this guy on YouTube and tell you what I think of him. But he's currently 7-1. Oh dear, look, 1 KO. That's not encouraging for him, is it? 1 KO, particularly at heavyweight, and you're fighting at not a very high level, and you've only got 1 knockout. Yeah, that doesn't bode well. Will he just be a sitting duck for the Savage? Will it actually be easier for the Savage against somebody who's big like this, therefore not able to get out of the way, but doesn't have the power to keep him honest. That's what this record would suggest. But as I have long said on this channel and will keep saying, knockout ratios don't always tell you the full story. Sometimes a guy will have a high knockout percentage, but not be a particularly hard, concussive one-punch hitter. But then you get other guys who don't have a particularly high knockout percentage, but they have far more power than their record or their knockout percentage suggests. So I'm always saying this. But yeah, I'll have a look at this guy on YouTube and see what I think of him. For now, long may the Babich Express continue. I'm certainly enjoying the journey. I'm sure a lot of you are as well. I know some people are just very critical of Babich to the point where they just dismiss him in a snobbish kind of way. Oh, I can't believe people care about this Babich guy. He's not going anywhere. He's going to get chinned way before he reaches world level. Okay. Well, if that happens, it happens. We're going to enjoy the journey until it does. That's all it is. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below.